February is Black History Month, and the Source will be looking at a number of different events through the month that are taking place. Joining us right now, someone who was involved in Niagara Park's very first Black History Symposium, happening on February 7th, Rochelle Bush. It's a pleasure to have you here in the studio.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
This symposium, you are the first speaker. Is that the way I'm reading that list of speakers? Or is it a group all coming together?
Well, what it actually is, it runs over a 3-month period. So the first speaker already spoke last week. And the next speaker will speak in February, towards the end of February, and then I will speak at the end of March. So it's a Black History lecture series running over 3 months.
So let's talk about your lecture. Your lecture focuses on Harriet Tubman, a local legend, a local hero here. What can you say about what you will be talking about in your segment?
So the title of my talk is Self-Liberated and Famous. So Tubman will be included in that, of course, because she is so famous. So I'll talk about some of her adventures, I'll call them, her escape missions to find her way to Canada with freedom seekers. But I'll also talk about other famous people who escaped and they settled somewhere in Niagara. Not everybody settled in St. Catharines.
Who are these other people?
So one, for example, would be Frederick Douglass. He had to hightail it out of Rochester, New York in 1860. So he arrived here. Then, of course, there's the story of Joe Bailey, Solomon Mosby, Josiah Henson.
These names, they're familiar to me, they're familiar to many, but for many years they weren't. And that's a huge problem.
Yes. That's because Black history wasn't on the radar. So our history wasn't important at the time, and now people are interested. So there's more interest in Black history outside of people who are of African descent.
As a historian yourself, as someone who is involved with the Salem British Methodist Episcopal Church in St. Catharines, you must be heartened by the fact that these stories are starting to be shared a little bit more.
Oh, I love it. I'm very, very grateful for that, because the Black contribution to Canada is just the same as everybody else's. So we put down roots here early. So Black loyalists, for example, but our story has never been told. So now we are able to tell that story and share it with a broader audience.
You do the Tubman tours. What do you do during those tours? Where do you take people?
So what I did is 10 years ago, to highlight Harriet Tubman and her time in St. Catharines, I created a tour specifically for her and specifically for St. Catharines. So it starts at the Salem Chapel, goes through the downtown core, then it goes through the Queenston area, and then of course as a Niagara Parks guide, it goes along the Parkway, and then we get to Harriet Tubman's crossing point, so her only entry point into Canada. So with that, I incorporate the local white history as well, so the abolitionist history, because St. Catharines was a hub for abolitionist activity. Everybody knew that starting in the 1840s, so that's what I highlight.
Can you take us to the church and how important that church is to Black history here in the Niagara region?
To the Niagara region, I would say it's the most important site. To be honest, I'm going to say it's the most important Black history site in Canada because it has the Tubman connection. North America-wide, probably in your top 5.
Last summer, during the Black Lives Matters protests, Black issues were at the forefront and
Yes.
all over the media. Some local young people organized a rally that began at the BME church. Were you helping them out with that, and did they come to you and ask for the permission to start at
Yes,
that
they did.
church?
It was excellent. And I say it was excellent because it was youth that wanted to move forward with the protest movement. And it was a diverse group of youth. So that's what made me feel good about it. So they wanted to start off at the Salem Chapel because they know that Harriet Tubman is a revolutionary, and they know that the church is a Black historic site. So they thought it would be fitting to start the movement there, and we agreed.
This is the first time really in recent history that we've seen youth that young, they were 16, 17 years old, these kids,
Yes.
taking something into their own hands.
Taking major steps to bring awareness to it. So I'm happy with it.
Can you talk about your ancestral connection to the church?
My 2 times great-grandfather was the minister in charge for a period of time when Harriet Tubman was at the church, and also when it was under construction, when they were building it, because it's the 3rd church there in St. Catharines. So what I think about almost on a daily basis is that my great-great-grandfather knew Harriet Tubman. He knew Moses. And then, I'm in awe of that, to think that my blood relatives communicated and mingled with her.
And those relatives were freedom seekers at one time, correct?
Yes. So my 2 times great-grandfather, they were free blacks from South Carolina. They relocated because the U.S. government passed the 1850 Fugitive Slave Act. So they wanted to get out of the United States in order to secure their safety and freedom. That's on my mother's side, the maternal side. On the paternal side, they were runaways from Virginia.
The BME Church was in the news the last couple of years because it was really in disrepair, needed
Yes.
a lot of work. You just recently received some funding from the government.
Yes, we received federal funding, a grant for $100,000 to help with the renovations. And the renovations are particular, so it has to work with the functionality of the church. So I'm quite honest and open about it. The Salem Chapel does have some safety concerns. When we have visitors come to the church, we have to stand in many areas to make sure people don't fall and hurt themselves. We certainly don't want to be sued. And in 1955-57, when we had a renovation project, they built a staircase, and it is so far out of code. Like, God bless them for doing that. They did the best they could. Totally out of code. So the top step is maybe 2.5 inches, and we have to stand there because people will miss it. They're not looking down, they're looking at everything that's on the walls and, all the artifacts that they want to see. So that's just one safety concern, that staircase. And then there's the upper balcony. Plank boards are separating, a lot of it's uneven. The windowsills are deteriorating, like they're over 160 years old. So some of them definitely have to be replaced, the ones that are visible. Only God knows what's going to happen when the contractors literally remove the windows and see what's inside the frames. So we don't know.
Is that $100,000 enough to do everything that needs to be done? And when will construction start?
Construction will start probably the early part of March. But the $100,000 is good for the functionality renovations. And then we also have the GoFundMe money because we started raising money in 2017. So there's almost $85,000 there. So we're looking at almost $200,000. And if I need to, I'll reach out to one of the foundations here in the Niagara area to ask for a few more $1,000 if we need it.
With the pandemic, no one's been visiting the church. Often people will leave donations when they do visit. Has that affected your fundraising?
People still send in money by, checks they'll send in. And yes, it has affected us. There is somewhat of a strain there, but even though we're not attending the church, we still give our offerings. And so far we've been able to make it, so we're good that way. But with the pandemic, we will not be there when the contractors are doing the work. I don't have to lord over them. They know what they're doing. They're the experts. I'm not an expert. I just know it needs to be fixed or it looks terrible. Please, help. So they'll go in the order of their choice, and then we have, a year or so to complete the projects.
Rochelle, thank you for joining us today, and good luck with that construction.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for having me here.